Everything in this story is completely fictional. Please make sure that if you're based in the United States of America, that you make a plan to vote today. Emma had always prided herself on being a dedicated voter. Every election, she showed up, rain or shine. But this year was different. She'd been hearing strange stories, rumors whispered on social media, and in hushed conversations at the grocery store. People said there were shadowy figures at polling stations, unusual vans parked outside people's homes, strange phone calls urging them to stay safe and stay home. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A heavy, almost oppressive air hung over the town like the calm before a storm. Every time she thought about Election Day, her stomach twisted with unease, as if warning her that this time, things were different. The morning of the vote, she left her house at dawn, hoping to avoid any crowds and get in and out quickly. Her polling place was in an old gymnasium at the edge of town, and the moment she walked through the doors, her skin prickled. The dim lights flickered, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. The volunteers, if that's what they were, stared at her, their expressions as blank as mannequins. Some wore unmarked badges, others dark suits that seemed strangely formal for an election day. She tried to shake it off. They're just here to help, she told herself, but her heartbeat quickened as she approached the table. A tall, stern man with cold, unblinking eyes blocked her path. "ID," he said in a voice so low it seemed to vibrate through her chest. Her hand shook as she dug through her purse, finally handing over her ID. He held it for what felt like an eternity, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. When he finally handed it back, he gestured toward the voting booths without a word. Emma walked to the booth, forcing herself to breathe slowly, to focus. "You're just imagining things," she thought. "Get a grip." She cast her vote, feeling a surge of relief as she pressed the final button. But as she did, a sharp, prickling sensation stung her fingertips, like a faint electric shock. She yanked her hand back, her heart racing. The screen went black. A low, distorted crackling sound buzzed through the speakers above her, making her jump. And then, chillingly, her own name echoed through the empty gymnasium. Emma Daniels. The voice was slow, dragging out each syllable like it was tasting her name, savoring it. Emma's breath hitched. No one should know her name. Not in the booth. Not like this. She took a shaky step back, her mind racing. She wanted to leave, to be anywhere but here. She glanced around, hoping to see someone, anyone, who looked normal, but every gaze in the room was fixed on her, empty and unblinking. As she hurried toward the exit, a dark-suited figure stepped in front of her, blocking her path again. "Ms. Daniels," he said in a flat, almost robotic tone, "we need a moment of your time, for verification purposes." Her throat tightened. "I already voted. I'd like to leave now." His face remained expressionless, his voice unyielding. "We insist. Follow me." With no choice, Emma followed, dread knotting in her stomach. He led her down a narrow, dimly lit hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly, the buzzing lights flickering overhead. Her footsteps echoed. Every step reminded her of how alone she was. The air grew colder, the walls seemed to close in around her as they reached a small, windowless room at the end of the hall. Inside was a single chair under a flickering light, surrounded by metal filing cabinets, their surfaces covered in a layer of dust. "Sit," he commanded. She hesitated, her pulse roaring in her ears, but the cold look in his eyes left no room for argument. She sat, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse, her mind racing. Why are they doing this? She wondered. What do they want from me? Moments later, a woman entered the room, also dressed in a dark suit, her face devoid of any warmth. She held a clipboard and began flipping through it with a practiced ease that made Emma's stomach turn. "Emma Daniels," she said, her voice cold, clinical. "We have reason to believe you may pose a risk. Certain choices can have unintended consequences, you understand?" Emma's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. I just voted. I haven't done anything wrong." The woman's gaze was sharp, piercing. "We're not saying you've done anything wrong, but certain choices can destabilize. We simply want to ensure your cooperation." A chill ran down Emma's spine. "My vote is private. I have rights." The woman's smile was thin, almost mocking. "Rights are subjective, Ms. Daniels. It's in everyone's best interest that we align. Think of us as protectors, guiding you to the best choice." Emma's fear twisted into anger. "You can't intimidate me. I know my rights." The woman's smile widened, a dark glint in her eyes. "Legality, Miss Daniels, is flexible. In times of uncertainty, sacrifices must be made. Stability comes at a cost." Emma's heart pounded as she shot up from her chair. "I'm leaving. You can't keep me here." But as she reached for the door, two men appeared, their hands like cold iron gripping her arms. Her pulse skyrocketed as she tried to pull away, but their grip tightened, their faces devoid of any emotion. The woman's voice was soft, but laced with menace. "Ms. Daniels, understand that leaving is a privilege, one not granted to everyone. You're either with us or against us, and those who do not cooperate often find themselves lost." Emma's voice shook. "You can't just make people disappear." The woman laughed, a soft, bone-chilling sound. "Oh, Ms. Daniels, we can, and we do." The men's grip tightened, their hands like steel around her wrists as they began to drag her toward the hallway. Panic erupted inside her, a primal fear clawing its way up her throat. "Please, no. You can't do this." The woman watched, her expression unreadable, her cold eyes gleaming in the flickering light. "We're here to protect the greater good. Personal choices are irrelevant." As they dragged her down the dark hallway, Emma screamed, the sound muffled by the oppressive silence of the empty school. She struggled, her heart pounding, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as she fought against the unyielding grip of the men beside her. The lights flickered again, casting ghostly shadows that seemed to mock her futile efforts. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Please, someone, help me." But her screams were swallowed by the darkness, the echo of her voice fading into an eerie, deafening silence. She realized, with a wave of horror, that no one was coming. No one would know what happened to her. The last thing she saw as they forced her through a hidden door was the woman's thin, twisted smile, watching her with cold satisfaction. And as the door slammed shut, plunging her into darkness, Emma felt a terrifying certainty settle in her gut. She was nothing more than a number, a threat to be eliminated, lost forever to a system that had no mercy, no conscience, no need for questions. She was simply gone. If you or someone you know need assistance with all things voting related, please go to www.vote.org. Remember, your voice, your vote